Again, what to expect today. So this is me going through a few of the logistics and introductions. We're going to have a bulk of the time for a panel discussion through our full family commuters who are here joining us today. Those audience questions that you can use the Q&A function for. And then we're going to highlight a couple of upcoming events later this week and later this month for folks biking to work and biking with their families as well. You might be asking, Move Minneapolis, why are we hosting this webinar? We're a transportation management organization that's a federally funded nonprofit focused on downtown Minneapolis commuting. Our mission is to improve air quality and reduce congestion. And we do that by facilitating trips throughout our community that are done outside of a single occupancy vehicle. Historically, we focus on commuting. That can be to your workplace, that can be to any errands that you're working with, and we consult with downtown Minneapolis employers as well. I like to think of us as the liaison between transportation providers themselves and the folks using the streets. We're here to help you out door to door and figuring out what your best option is and what you might want to pursue, and helping breaking down those barriers, whatever your mode and whatever your preferences are in making that happen. What we do within that. We're working directly with employers. We work on large carpool registrations. We work on MetroPass signups. We're here to facilitate any bike parking questions or bike facility questions. We generate a number of different resources. We have a remote work guide as well as an affordable transportation guide, and you can expect a micro transit guide from us soon, that being the new bike scooter companies and bike share companies that we have in our city as well. And we generally are here to promote sustainable transportation. If you have any questions or would like to work with us in the future, my email is on the screen. Please feel free to reach out with anything. I often say that the best part of my day is my commute to the grocery store, and will talk your ear off of just whatever your commute is and whatever brings you joy in it. That's just me. Today, the bulk of our conversation is going to be run by our guests. We often are here out in our community talking about what we do, talking about options to get around. And one of the most common things we hear is, well, I've got to pick up my kids from school, or I've got a full family to take care of. I need to drive my own car. And yes, it's true that driving is the easiest option in the world we live in. But these are really the experts that are going to be sharing their story and why they choose to take other options and the joy that it brings them as well. So bear with me as I read through some introductions of these folks, and then I can hand it off to them sooner than later. Laura Mitchell is a South Minneapolis resident who is passionate about transportation equity and environmental sustainability. Her whole family, wife and 2 young kids, loves biking and walking, both as transportation and recreation. Walking and biking with her kids supercharged Laura's belief that we need to put more work into ensuring our infrastructure supports the needs of people traveling outside vehicles. Laura is on the board of Our Streets Minneapolis and serves as a representative for District 3 on the Hennepin County Active Transportation Committee. Alex is a Minneapolis resident and dad of 2 kids, a longtime advocate for safer streets and better transit. Alex has previously worked at Our Streets Minneapolis, the Sierra Club, and is a current volunteer board member at Move Minnesota. Alex is currently the development director for the Lake Street Council. His favorite bus line is the 21. Cambray is a parent, a lifelong Minnesotan, and a professional who commutes to downtown Minneapolis. While a student at the University of Cambridge in the UK, Cambray was inspired by the many families she saw commuting daily by cargo bike. Keen to translate the lifestyle to Minnesota's more car-centric environment, she embarked on a journey to build her own cargo bike with the help of many others in the community. Carmen has been living in Minneapolis community for 18 years, finding solace and joy in biking in this vibrant city. As a dedicated commuter cyclist, Carmen has seen much of Minneapolis on 2 wheels, immersing herself in the bike-friendly infrastructure. With a cargo bike specifically designed for their kids, Carmen prioritizes safety above all else, ensuring that every family adventure is enjoyable and secure. And one last note from me, I couldn't help from add this after a Mother's Day well spent this last weekend. If you start biking young with your kids, like my mother did with me, as I'm very grateful for, it's amazing how much inspired confidence and independence is really brought within being able to problem solve and being able to connect with community in every single trip that's out there as well. And you might just get the ball rolling and being able to spend a week away biking in Italy with your kid if you start it young as well. A couple just last things. I want to make sure I'm sharing opportunities to connect with us in the future. You can keep an eye out for us on social media, as well as sign up for our newsletter. And then later this week, as I mentioned, it's Bike Week. We've got Friday, May 19th, 3 p.m. We've got a bike to work event, and then a celebration group ride kickoff that's going to be heading to Art Whirl later in Northeast Minneapolis as well. And then for all the families and parents joining us, I wanted to highlight an event by Minneapolis Public Schools and Safe Routes to School on June 1st. I'll be following up with more information of these at the end of the webinar. This is a South Minneapolis event at 3 p.m. on Thursday, June 1st, in partnership with Twin Cities Adaptive Cycling for some parents and some kiddos out there making a ride happen. All right. That's what you're going to be seeing from me, hearing from me today. I really want to be able to pass this time over to our guests in today's webinar. And I want to hand the conversation off to you all. I read through an introduction, but would love to hear from you all on telling us a little bit more about yourself, your family, and some essence of what your commutes look like. Laura, if you're willing to get us started in the conversation, that'd be great.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So glad to be here with all the panelists and all the folks who are joining. As Carl mentioned in my bio, I have 2 young kids who are 4 and 7 now, and we live in South Minneapolis. My wife and I both work from home, so we don't have a work commute currently, although we have bike commuted in the past a ton. Our primary commutes are just getting our kids to school. So our oldest goes to a neighborhood school, Lindale, which is about 5 blocks away, and our other kiddo goes to school at a Montessori preschool, which is about, if we could take a direct route, it would be 1.5 miles, but because there is not a safe direct route for us to cross 35W from our home, it ends up taking more like 2.5 miles for us to get there. So we walk, we bike. If the weather is really terrible, sometimes we take the car, but we try to just be in our neighborhood as much as possible. And then we do a ton of riding bikes on the weekends to go to various events, to see friends, family, that sort of thing.
Alex, are you willing to fill us in next?
Sure, I'm happy to hop in. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Tsatsoulis. I use he, him pronouns. I similarly live in South Minneapolis with my wife and 2 kids. My boys are about 6 and 8 years old right now, which is kind of incredible to me because we started riding when they were both babies. My oldest started riding in our cargo bike at 6 months of age, and really because, you know, we've always tried to live kind of intentionally close to things, purposely trying to find ways to bike and walk to get around, just because it's just a lot more fun, you know, to be connected to things, not to be stuck in traffic. You know, so that was kind of our reason for starting. And right now we you know, we'll bike to the school bus, we'll bike to and from school, summer camps, you know, ice skating, piano, whatever they have to do in the evenings during the day. So a lot of we're just running around with kids. And you know, we do own a car, you know, that having the cargo bikes has really made it so that we can just own a single car, and has made it a lot cheaper because we don't put a bunch of wear and tear on it, mileage, all that. So happy to be here.
Carmen, are you willing to share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go next and I'll pass it to Cambray. My name is Carmen Wade. Really similar story to Laura and Alex. I have lived in Minneapolis about 18 years, came here to work for Target right after college, and immediately started biking. Tried to bike where I was from, and Fargo, North Dakota is not really built for lots of biking. So I was so excited to move to a city where biking was more embraced. Started commuter biking, biking downtown from South Minneapolis, and even before I had kids, before I was married, I would see those cargo bikes and just daydream about someday being able to haul my future children around on bikes as well. Similar story, community is so important to me. So trying to do as much within the community as possible, even if that's just physically being outside in my community and meeting people that way. Yeah, just enjoying being outside. I think also for me, a really important part is mental health. And keeping my mental health in check. Being outside, getting exercise and moving my body is a big part of that. So another reason why I'm a big advocate for cycle commuting. I think starting and ending your workday on a bike, there's just nothing better. And then similar to Alex's story, and I saw Laura nodding along, and I know Cambray personally, all are single car families. So having biking as an option is a huge deal for us. Just really makes ease of transportation so much easier. Our commute right now, working from home, so my commute is just to daycare and back, but it just really helps us start and end our day on a really high note. So Cambray, I'll pass it to you.
Hi, I'm really excited to be here. I'm also excited to go after Carmen. She and I work together, and she's one of my own inspirations for biking with my own family. When I was thinking about it, I talked to her, and she told me a little bit about how she had approached it and the routes that she had taken in the past. And that really helped me feel like it was something I could consider doing myself. I am a mom of a toddler, and I work downtown Minneapolis. So that's typically kind of where I'm heading day to day. And when I was in graduate school, as we mentioned up top, I worked and spent some time in the UK in a town that is really bike friendly. And so I had exposure to and visibility to lots of families confidently navigating the city on cargo bikes. I even had to do some laundry, and my laundry got delivered by a cargo bike and some flowers got delivered by a cargo bike. So I had some exposure to both how you can move about an urban center via bicycle if the built environment is set up in a way that's safe and accessible for you to move around, but also that the idea that a bike might limit how much you can carry or what you can safely transport, it really kind of changed my perception of what that would mean. For example, I saw someone cycling with a cargo bike full of corgi puppies, like 20 of them, it seemed like. So seeing that, I thought certainly like a strapped in human child could probably safely make it around town as well. And I also saw examples of families with like 4 kids, school bus style in there. So during the pandemic, I undertook a project to see if I could try to bring something like that into my own life and Minneapolis life, and through the help of many others was able to build and am now riding a cargo bike of my own. I have no bike skills, nothing practical. I watched YouTube and I just asked for help, and the Minneapolis bike community has been incredible in terms of support, resources, education, and also service to help those of us who are brand new and aren't coming into it with any clear sense of like what all these parts are even named and navigating that. And I felt really supported by the community. So I also wanted to say that I came into it without a ton of like bike skills, bike knowledge, or even a lot of the language for what you need to ask for help. I typically drop my kid off to and from school and come downtown occasionally as well via bike. And it's a lovely time that we can spend together. I like that when she sits in front of me, it's really observational. She can ask me about what she's seeing. She can wave to her neighbors. We can have conversations. And to me, that is the big difference with sort of putting a toddler into a car. If you have families with this age group, is we're fighting. She's struggling. She doesn't want to be in the car seat. It can be really stressful and kind of a disconnecting experience. And I think most of us as parents, as we try to get through all of the different places we need to be in our responsibilities throughout the day, if we can have more of those moments of sort of connection and time together while we're also getting through what we need to do, and have that feel like positive time well spent, that is such a win. And so that is a huge part for me of sort of the beauty and joy that cycling, I think, brings into my daily life, is it lets us spend that time together observing what we see, waving to others and chatting, instead of fighting and in conflict.
That's fantastic. I'm thank you all for getting us started here. I want to jump off of just that point of talking about some of these resources and where you can get started. Cambray, I'm curious if there were any specific networks or websites that you went to find out about building your own bike, and I'd love to be able to hear more about that bike as well.
Sure. I admit I did not really know where to start or what I was doing, but I had taken pictures while I was a student. And so I Googled some of the names of the brands that I saw labeled on the cargo bikes. And so I ended up working with a bike company here in the US to ship something from the Netherlands over. It got here totally fine in a couple of different boxes, but then I had to assemble it. So all of that was a learning process. I personally chose a model that it's pretty big and heavy and bulky. So it also has a battery assist. For me personally, not a super strong, super fit biker. Like I aspire to be like Carmen. She is fully leg powered and an excellent cyclist, but I didn't come into that with either that confidence or that like fitness level. So I think for me, this model kind of made it accessible to get around town and kind of navigate with a model that's a little bit heavier, but also gives me that room to like, I can stop off for groceries and I don't worry about it. I have plenty of room for it. And with the boost then that the battery offers, it really helps me so that it's not sort of like this absolute slog. It's comfortable and fun. So I appreciate that about this particular model. And it's really just kind of a delight to ride. I do try sometimes to turn the battery assist off and oh my goodness, it's so notable, the difference. So I have a ton of respect for those who don't use the battery assist. And it is something that I think for me personally helped make it easier to say yes to cycling in the first place.
With that in mind, I'm hearing these conversations of talking about cargo bikes and talking about e-assist or not e-assist. I'd love to hear from the rest of you about just the tools you use, specifically the bike, but then any other little kind of tips and tricks you might have learned of helping making this easy for your kids to enjoy the experience as well. Carmen or Alex, I heard it mentioned that e-assist might not be on your setup.
I'd love to speak to this a little bit. I can speak to it. So I don't have an assist on my bike, as Cambray mentioned. I'm a little bit stubborn in the fact that I feel like I can do it without. And reflection now, and as my kids are growing and gaining weight as you want your children to do, right? It's getting more difficult, but it's still up for that challenge. And it's still really exciting for me to have that challenge. I think as a busy mom, working mom, as I'm sure working parent, as a lot of you can relate, finding time for that old physical activity is a little bit harder to come by, right? So anytime I get the opportunity to, move my body in that way, it feels really good. I think, Car, you mentioned something about getting your kids sort of excited and ready for the bike. One thing that was difficult for me and one thing that I really wanted to prepare for is my oldest is a little bit hesitant. He's a little bit shy and he's very careful. So what we did to prepare for this was we talked about the bike long before he got on the bike, before we even purchased the bike. But these bikes are an investment, obviously, and Laura and I were chatting before we got started. There's not a lot of secondhand cargo bikes out there right now. They're few and far between. So making the investment to buy a new bike, you want to make sure that your kids are excited about it. So we talked about it a ton, what it would be like, how it would be really fun and exciting and maybe a little bit scary, but we'd work through that together. Another thing we did is we picked out stickers to put on their helmets, right? Get them really excited. Like, how can we make anything really customizable for them and give them some power in the choice to help them feel ready and excited? By the time the bike came, they were both pumped on it. They had their Mario stickers all over their helmet, on their seats of their bike. And that just made a really easy transition to get them happy and excited to get on the bike. So just wanted to tell that part of the story of how you might be able to help prepare some of your kids and little ones that might have a little bit more hesitancy around going fast. They love it now. They scream to pass cars if I can. That's not happening, but they really appreciate it when we can go fast.
I feel like I kind of am in between both of y'all right now, because so we started, I got a Babo cargo bike, which is from the Netherlands. It's kind of a front bucket loaded one that was unpowered. Bought that used from a family that had outgrown it, and started with our kids when they were babies. So, it could fit a car seat in there. And then later on, when one got big enough, you could sit on the bench with a little harness and all that. And it got to the point where they were both going to different schools, and then I was going to work afterwards, and I would just show up just drenched in sweat. I was like, I would just bike like 8 miles with my kids. The bike itself weighs over 100 pounds. It's just, it got to the point where I was like, I'm tired of going to the bathroom stall and like changing and doing all this like every day. Because bike commuting by myself, I was kind of used to that, right? We used to live in Uptown. I worked in St. Paul. I was used to like biking across town all weather and then changing and all that. But with the kids, you're starting to carry all their gear and all that stuff. It became a little much. So we ended up buying long tail e-bikes. I have a Rad Wagon by Rad Power Bikes. Had about 3 years now, and it is just a complete game changer to have that electric assist. And I have pretty bad asthma. It's something that I've had for a while, and it's something that makes it really hard to like, really put the pedal down and work super duper hard. So being able to like crank up the assist a little bit when you hit a hill and you got 100 and something pound of kids behind you, and they're squirming and yelling and doing whatever they're doing and fighting each other as they always are, makes it a lot easier. And it also just makes it so there's way more places we can go. Like if I want to go to like Nokomis, and then we want to go and get a pizza afterwards or something, I don't really worry about it. I throw stuff on the bike. We've got some big like kind of bag things on the side that they kind of sit over. And it's super easy to go to. It even comes with like a rain cover. So, on those days where you just get caught in the rain, there's nothing you can do. You can throw that on. I'm the one who gets wet. They don't. That's okay. A lot of this is just keeping the peace with the kids. But I think with all of this, if you're looking, if you haven't taken the leap, if you haven't started, I highly recommend just going to a bike shop. There's a lot of bike shops that focus on cargo bikes. There's bike shops that have electric bikes. If you're in South Minneapolis, I go. I don't want to recommend specific bike shops, but I go to Perennial Cycle a lot. They got a lot of, they're really focused on family biking and electric bikes. But there's lots of shops out there. So go out and test something out, bring your kids with, have them sit on the back of the bike. That's how before we bought our long tail, we were at Open Streets, and I think the hub had a little setup with some bikes, and I got my kid on the back of one. He was like, holy crap, we're flying. And I was like, yeah, we actually are. And this is amazing. And so just try some bikes out and really find what works for you.
So I'll go next. Carl gave us these questions in advance, and I was a little bit extra and put together all of my gear recommendations just because I have people asking me about this stuff constantly. So maybe this will be helpful for someone. Here's my bike, or as some kids we saw at the playground yesterday referred to it as a big motorcycle with 3 people on it. And so I have some recommendations and some links here and some of the ways that we have fully outfitted it to fit our kids' needs. I'd say a really simple thing that has been a game changer for us is just having the separation between the 2 of them, which we have through these little backrests. So that, to Alex's point, when they're fighting, there's at least a tiny bit of a barrier. We also have a way to hook up a burley. So if I really need to separate them, I can put one on the back of the bike and one in the burley behind us. And then just drink holders for the kids to be able to like put their own water bottles on the back and put snacks there too. I mean, honestly, snacks is probably my biggest recommendation, but all the ways that we already plan to have snacks for our kids have ways to carry those snacks on the bike. But then I just have a ton of links here around some of the things that we've added. As Alex mentioned, we have, some panniers, the bags that are on the side there. There's some stuff around visibility, safety. One that we have added to our bike that I haven't seen in a lot of other places is this bike horn. I typically just use my bell, especially if I'm just trying to communicate to another person on a bike or someone who's walking. But when a car is doing something particularly dangerous, I will use this horn. And just the other day, there was someone trying to hit us from the side, and I used the horn and it caught their attention and they stopped. And so it's something that I don't use super often, but I'm really glad to have on the bike, especially when I have the kids with me and want to make sure that people are driving safely around us. So there's just some recommendations there. And then the other thing that has been really helpful for us is this is our sort of messy garage, but setting things up so that we can literally walk in the door and grab everything we need. Like we have the rain gear is down in those boxes at the bottom. We have all of our different panniers. We have our locks. We have our helmets. We have some of our other bikes. That has been made it easy to get out the door quickly. And for my kids, now that they're getting older, they can grab everything they need for us to be able to get on the bike and hop out.
Can't believe you just called that messy.
Well, you can see the messiness to the right of the bikes. The bike area is not messy.
That's the important part. Laura, thanks for sharing, and for everyone in attendance, I'll make sure I get those sent out to you all over via email, and Laura's put it in the chat here as well. I kind of want to, we started to hear some of these questions when, as somebody who's out trying to talk to folks about ways they can reduce their car-free commutes or reduce their car commutes and reduce the need to go car-free. Kind of want to dive into this question of what it looks like when these commutes go wrong. I heard from a number of you that you're one-car households, and what this looks like. Often a question I get is, what if one of my kids gets sick, or what if it is a rainy day, or things like that. I'd love to hear what some of those just problem-solving moments look like and what you're prepared for in making this possible.
I can start, I guess. We have had a lot of times when things have gone wrong, and I think part of the challenge with having a cargo bike versus being in a car or whatever is that when there's a tantrum or a meltdown, it's public, right? Everyone can see your kids screaming on the parkway about, having low blood sugar and, or wanting to like go back and pet a puppy or whatever it is that they're screaming about today. In the car, it's a lot different. Like you feel it's not as embarrassing to be the guy with the kid who's like having a meltdown. So I think, being prepared is always really important. Snacks were mentioned. Snacks are, my number one tool. Always have snacks. And I think any parent will have snacks with them, no matter how you're getting around, what you're doing. I think the other thing is being positive, at least for me, makes a huge difference. If it's raining, I'm not like, dang it, it's raining, we're all going to be miserable and wet. We try to make a game out of it. We try to have fun. There are things you can do, bring rain jackets. I have a cover on my bike. There's things you can do like that, but positive attitude makes a big difference, especially when you're trying to like instill that this is a fun activity. Like they're having fun. Like kids typically, like, even if you get caught in the rain or whatever, it's fun for them until you make them think it's not fun, and so and then I would say, just take it easy. Like start off slow, find things that you're comfortable with to build your own comfort with what you're doing. If there's parts that you're like, I'm kind of sketched out by that, I don't feel comfortable, don't do that right away, because the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to get in a situation where you don't feel comfortable. Your kids are going to feel it, you're going to feel it, you're not going to want to do it again, they're not going to want to do it again. So do small things. Start off, go to Dairy Queen, go take small rides to places that are fun, get them used to the idea of being on a bike. And so when things do inevitably go wrong, which they always will with kids, they have this positive experience to fall back on, that just makes it easier for everyone. And they're going to want to do it again. So what I got.
I was just going to mention leaving a little bit of extra space and time, right? Like for those unexpected. I'm also a big advocate for people to understand their bike and how to do really basic maintenance on it, right? Carrying a patch kit for a pop tire. I know that's something that I ran into all the time when I was on my fixed gear and having to do a quick tire change on the side of the road. Also, to Alex's point, that's like really a great teaching moment, right? For your kids, patience and problem solving. So yeah, that's easier said than done, right? Keeping that positive attitude, even when things are going wrong, but just, trying to find those positives and doing as much as you can to learn those basic maintenance skills, that are going to help you in those situations.
I will say the flip side of that is I have never changed a tire on my cargo bike, and I hope never to, never change a tube. I can do it on my normal bikes, but my wife and I have an agreement that if anything happened with our gigantic, heavy electric cargo bike, that we need a bailout option. And so my recommendation, if you're like me and don't want to be changing a tube, is to have your lock with you. Even if if your destination would not involve you normally locking your bike, make sure you have your lock with you in case you need to bail and get a ride somewhere and do something. And then the other thing that my wife and I did when we bought our bike was we bought a carrier that goes on our car, so that if we needed to go pick up the bike, if it was unable to be ridden somewhere, we would be able to haul it home with our car. We have bike insurance on ours, and there's a roadside assistance that you can get for cargo bikes. So that could be an option for folks too. But I just try to think of like, what's the worst case scenario? And do I have my backup plan? Do I have my phone? Do I have an extra like bank charger in case my phone battery is going to get low and I need to have a way to call someone if something goes wrong? But just think through like what you're comfortable with and what you can handle, and then have a plan for anything that you can't handle on your own.
I'll just add kind of on top of that. I think I always have my go-to card with me, which is being blurred out. But, you know, be aware of when you're going, because a lot of the trips you're going to take are the same trip over and over again. Like I know the route to school that I take. I know that we're going to pass the green line. I know we're going to pass the 63 bus. I know, you know, so having those kind of mapped out in your mind in advance, just so like if you are running late to something, like you can still get there. We also have an EV membership, so you can join like Our Car or EV. Those are free, I think. You know, you have to pay when you use it, but there's like free options. Just good backups to have as well, just in case. And I know at least once this winter, I hadn't put studs on my bike yet, so we weren't riding the bike right then. My car battery died, so I was able to take my personal bike, go get an EV, and come back and get the kids, get to school and back. And so having that as a backup is nice. And I'd take the car battery out of the car and take it to AutoZone to get a new one. So, you know, the bike saved the car's day that day.
I think additionally, as a parent, safety is really important. So one thing, I haven't had a lot of like mishaps. I've had really a positive experience overall. But I think one thing that is on my mind, and I think where I feel a little nervous, is around when we want to go somewhere new, particularly where I am not totally sure what the route is going to look like. I've had a couple of moments in which the majority of the ride is incredible. And if we are using sort of transitway and some of the awesome infrastructure that we have in Minnesota, it feels super safe with kids. But there are little stretches and patches because our transitway system for bikes is just not completely connected to everywhere, where suddenly things feel a little bit scary. And that makes me sometimes kind of apprehensive of like, can I be impromptu without doing a ton of planning and like pre-scouting the route alone by myself? And what's that going to feel like? So, I mean, I think truly the answer is that we need better infrastructure in Minnesota overall so that those gaps are closed. But cycling in the reality that we're in, I really appreciate sort of the community in Minnesota that of other cyclists that have done a lot of work with some of these routes and mapping. And sometimes I've been able to find online or on social media that others have sort of figured this out and have recommendations for where to go and how to go. And I honestly spend a little extra mental time doing that if we're going to go somewhere new, trying to figure out how I can most safely get through those patches of lack of connection. I think the other thing that's happened to me in those moments too, of sort of like going from a greenway through a busy section back to another safer, more protected bikeway, is drivers that will shout and heckle. And I think sometimes they'll even shout at me and my kid for daring to be on a bike in the road, or that it's dangerous for a kid to ever be on a bike. And so I think there's a little bit of sort of social stigma in our culture that you can be confronted with simply by the act of choosing to ride on the bike. I hope that by us showing up, we're also showing other people that it's an option. But I think it's something I think about a little bit in terms of the challenge of where we might go and then who we might see along the way, and if that would be scary for my kid.
I'd love to jump in there and kind of just take a step back from the conversation of folks who are doing this. I think we're all doing this in a Minneapolis context, but in general, I would love to just talk about, as someone who's starting that process of looking at what a safe route might look like. I'd love to hear from you all what a safe street feels like to you. I heard you, Cambray, I heard you mention greenways and bike routes and different things like that. Would love to hear from you all just why you choose the routes that you do in that process.
I think for me, it depends on how we're riding. So if I have both of my kids on my long tail cargo bike with me, I might ride on Portland or Park because I know that I can stay in the buffered area and not be terribly concerned. But now that my kids are getting older and starting to want to ride their own bicycles, the only time I let them ride their bikes separate from me is if we are on a elevated or physically separated space, like some of our curb protected bikeways, or like what went on and is increasingly being built on South Bryant, where it's off the street and more on the sidewalk level. To me, those feel the safest when I'm biking with my kids.
I would agree. I think though, I'm much more willing to ride on certain streets when it's just me, in control. My youngest, who's 6, is like an incredible daredevil, and I don't think I can hold him back from riding wherever the hell he wants, whatever he wants. So he rides his own bike. We tend to prefer like smaller neighborhood streets. We always try to, when we're going to cross a major street like Lake Street or something like that, we do so at intersections, like controlled intersections with like a light. And so we'll go out of our way a little bit to do that. Just because they're not really good at starting and stopping. They're not necessarily always paying attention to the world around them. I find that, most of the bike lanes in Minneapolis are not great for riding on with just them. Like, I don't feel comfortable with them riding on their own. They wobble, they're not paying attention to people opening car doors. We do get some harassment as well on streets like that. I've always been amazed that someone like a grown adult would honk and yell at a child on a bike, but apparently there are people who do that. So, but yeah, I say, I use Google Maps. I use, just my own knowledge of streets when we're planning to go places to really kind of map out, use Street View, see kind of what intersections look like, that kind of thing. Intersections tend to be kind of the highest stress areas.
So this is something I think about a lot. My kids are just 2.5 and 4, so they're not on their own bikes yet, beyond just like our backyard. As someone that is super passionate about biking, has been doing it, like I said, for 18 years in the city, I'm really hesitant to have my children biking on streets. Just knowing, the increase of technology being used in cars as well, that's something that keeps me up at night. Really no fear when it comes to myself, like I think a lot of people are, but then when it comes to the safety of your children. So just trying to understand like where we are going to be able to have those safe biking experiences is something I've been spending a lot of time thinking about. Personally, as someone that identifies and presents as a woman, as biking in my younger days, faced a lot of unwanted attention and harassment as well, just being on the bike. Would avoid unlit streets, unlit bike paths, especially the Greenway at night if I was biking by myself. So those are things that I have less problems with now, just being at a different stage in my life. I'm not doing a lot of nighttime biking, pretty much staying within my neighborhood and my community. Another thing that I don't think has been mentioned is just the safety of other bikers as well, and kind of that general understanding that these bike paths are for everyone. I don't know if anyone has had chances to bike around the lakes. It can be a really kind of intense experience. I think having options for those people that are looking to get in miles as like a true like cycling exercise, having that in the same sort of area where you're seeing people experience, biking for the first time, just always feels really unsafe and really confrontational almost at times. So these are the things that I'm thinking about, and as my kids are starting to want to learn to bike on their own. I was going to mention one more thing. I know there's a lot of different ways to bike with children. I chose the cargo bike again for that sense of control and having them really close besides me or behind me. We had tried a tag along, one of like it's like a little pull, a burly is what they're called, and still just didn't feel that sense of comfort knowing that so many of the bike paths were right next to those car lanes. So that's why we made the choice to have the kids right next to me, just for that sense of control and a little bit more, just visibility to what's happening in this situation.
Awesome. And thank you all. I think we've started to hear these conversations of how your kids interact with this experience. I think we heard patience come up in being able to change a tire, being able to hear about some of those kind of daredevil opportunities. But I would love to hear just a little bit more about what your experience of your kids' reaction and experience of being able to do this with you feels like as a parent, as well as how you see them growing with it as well.
We're both unmuting. Go ahead.
I think I can share 2 quick stories that I think encapsulate this really well. First of all, my kids, whenever we're in the car and get on the highway, they go, "Aw, the highway, that's so boring," which just tells you how much they're used to our normal transportation being exciting to them. But a couple things that happened just in the last few weeks. Number one, I was riding my kid home from preschool and we saw a tortoise that lives in the Bancroft neighborhood and goes for walks with its owner. That's amazing. Those are the sorts of things that you're not going to see oftentimes if you're taking a car and taking the like more heavily trafficked roads. And then also the crabapple trees are just totally in blossom. And because we were on our bike, we were going on 40th Street down here in South Minneapolis, and there was a ton of crabapple trees. We smelled them, so I pulled over so we could just be underneath the crabapple trees sniffing the amazing smell. And I feel like those sorts of things, in addition to what everyone has named earlier of like waving at neighbors and having an understanding of what our neighborhood looks like and who the people are that we live around and what the businesses are, and just all those things, it's been immensely powerful and positive for my kids overall.
I love that. I was going to say, in preparation for this yesterday, we were riding home from ice skating, and I asked my kids what their favorite thing about riding on the bike was, and they both said nothing. And I said, what's your favorite thing about driving in the car? And they said nothing. And to me, what that tells me is that it's unremarkable. It's just a way we get around. And, by starting at an early age, we don't have fights about like how we're going to get places. It's either like they're going to ride their own bike, they're going to ride on my bike, or they're going to get in the car. The biggest fight we have is when they want to ride their own bikes and it's like 10 miles away. And I'm like, you can't, we'll get there tomorrow. Like, you're very slow. I think, what this has given them is a lot of confidence and ability that they wouldn't have normally. We were riding home from the bus yesterday, and my kid's just waving to like other kids that he's passing. And I was like, are they like neighbors of ours? And they don't even know some of these kids. But it's like, he like feels cool, like he's getting around on his own, he's doing his thing. He'll peel off from us when we get to our block, and he'll just go see if like the kids in the neighborhood are out playing, and he'll just go hang out with them. And I like that he has that ability and that he can just do that. I don't have to like drive him home, and you wouldn't have seen them if they were out anyways, like all this stuff. Like, it's not a big process. And just, what you were saying, Laura, just being able to like stop and do things. We can stop by a park, or we can stop by the bookstore or whatever, because we're just going past, and it's super easy to just be like, yeah, let's do it. Like, they can call it out and do it. So that flexibility, that ease. I think someone earlier on had mentioned the idea that like you connect with your kids more. Like, when my kids were really little and they were in front of me in the bucket and the bike when they were babies, I could like talk to them. We could sing songs. I could like pay attention to them. We're on the trail. I feel comfortable like just being entirely focused on them instead of like looking in a rearview mirror and trying to get his attention. So it just, you have this connection that you wouldn't have otherwise. And for good or bad, like when there's fights, like you're much more connected. But it's almost magical. So
I love that point, Alex. In kind of, counter to what you said about it being ordinary, which I also really love. It's like, how can, as a mom, I'm always trying to create moments of magic for my children, right? Like, even day to day. And so I saw someone in the chat, like, what's one of your favorite memories? And in the summer, we do popsicle pickup at daycare. So we're picking them up on the bike, and they get popsicles for their ride home, and just really embracing like everything that is like summer, I think is just so important to me. I've always threatened to be a winter biker, but I've never made the plunge. So this like diving right in, right? Like all spring, summer, and fall long, and just making as much magic as I can for my kids, and just those moments of ordinary, right? Whether it be getting out the door on the way to school. It has helped us achieve that to a certain extent.
I love that the word magic is coming up as the theme here. And before you had both said that, it was in my head too of what I would add. And I think I personally, I can't think of a time I've been in a car and been like, that was magical for me. One moment that we had with my little one, we had ridden on the U of M Transitway over to go to Malcolm Yards to get some ice cream and some pizza on like a Friday afternoon. I think there was a U of M game or something. It was busy, and it happened to be, this is not through any planning or knowing it was going to happen on our part in any way. There happened to be a couple other families all in cargo bikes, all on the road at the same time, and just the experience watching her be like in awe of everyone waving. She felt like she was in a parade. Like, the amount of excitement and joy from just that small moment of seeing other people sharing the ride with others and sort of being part of a community in some way was absolutely magical. I can't even think of another word more apt than that. And we have those types of moments often. And I think in terms of what matters in my day-to-day choices in life, I want that type of magic to happen for her and for myself and for our family. And it offers a little bit of that for us while we're still getting from A to B together.
I love it. I'm kind of pushing off of that magic, I'm gonna start answering or passing along some of the questions that we've gotten in the Q&A. Please, if you're in the attendance, please feel free to keep asking them. And if we don't get to them all during our planned time, I'll be planning to answer all of them in our follow-up email as well. Throughout this conversation, we've talked about the opportunity to go down to a single family or a single vehicle household, as well as kind of that initial price tag of a cargo bike. We've got a couple questions around, first of all, what maintenance of a cargo bike looks like, as well as what kind of the annual cost of that. I think a lot of people are approaching this conversation from both the big upfront price tag, but then also how that can affect your life in the long run. So whether that's something you take on yourself or whether there are folks who are able to help you out with this as well.
I can start, I guess. So I would say, upfront price tag, when you think about that, again, like I said earlier, go test ride some bikes, see what you like, what you're comfortable with before you start making a determination on kind of what's going to fit your, obviously you have a budget, but like, go see what's going to fit. Is it going to be like a bucket style bike or like a trike kind of bike, or what is it? Think about all the accessories you're going to want. For me, it was really important to have a front basket to hold backpacks, to have some slings to hold all our extra stuff. Like in the winter, we put our sleds in there and skis and all that. I like having a cover on my bike and kind of a kid's seating area. It makes it a lot easier to like control them to some degree, so they don't flop around a bunch, but they like have a place that's theirs, and they can do theirs. And Laura, you have a whole list of accessories. So think about like, what is it that you want to have? I have a $20 Bluetooth speaker that I've like zip tied to my bike, like that kind of thing. Make your budget and then just start seeing what other people are riding. Go when you're at the park, ask people about their bikes, talk to them about what they have, what they like, what they don't. We've seen a lot of rad wagons around, seen a lot of turns around. For maintenance, for me at least, I do some of my own maintenance, but for the most part, I'll go to a shop like once a year, and it's, maybe some new brake pads, maybe a new chain, $100, $200. Like it's not a ton of money, overall for over the course of a year. The worst thing that's happened to my bike is I had to get a new wheel, and that was after 3.5 years, and that was like $200. So I spend way less in maintenance than I do for like 2 oil changes in a year. So, and that's going to differ for everyone, but that's been my experience.
Yeah, piggybacking on Alex, since we both have rad wagons, my family, given our budget, we opted for a lower cost bike because we knew we would want to accessorize it, and that if we got the higher price bikes, we wouldn't be able to accessorize it in the way that we needed to. And the accessories, I think that word is a little bit of a misnomer, because if we didn't have those things, we wouldn't be able to make the bike work for us as a car replacer. So having the panniers, the bags on the side, having the front basket, like the bike wouldn't work for us if we couldn't afford to add those things. So just keep that in mind. I also would say my wife is pretty handy with bikes. So she actually did switch out the brakes on our rad wagon to upgrade them to hydraulic brakes. But other than that, we've just done regular maintenance as far as cleaning and lubing the chain, and that's been it. So it can be, if you're lucky, pretty low cost. We haven't spent anything on the bike as far as maintenance, except for just the cost of lube and rags to keep the chain good. And I think, as Alex mentioned earlier, it is good if you're not a person who's as handy with bikes to just have a bike shop that can help you out in case you get into a pinch. But it's definitely nothing compared to the cost of car maintenance and ownership.
I would just echo that same experience. I think the upfront cost of the bike certainly was something to consider, but definitely drastically cheaper than a car. And then we haven't spent any money since, except for that I chose to buy a spare battery charger that I can bring around with me. But, truly, like, maybe I should be going and taking it in more often, but I'm riding it regularly, having a good time. Nothing seems to be an issue. And I haven't spent a single dollar since getting it set up and running.
The same thing on my end. That initial investment is an investment. So making sure you're finding the right bike for your family is important. I think I love Laura's point about making sure that you're leaving budget for those accessories, because that's really the difference between having a cargo bike that you use and you don't use, right? So made the choice to really make, again, the investment in buying all that gear to make it compatible and comfortable for my children to ride in. So they are also excited about it. I will say, as someone that, used to ride a super lightweight, sleek bike, the maintenance is just a lot. It's a very different experience. I feel like these cargo bikes are really heavy duty. And so you're not going to be changing tires all the time, replacing tubes, needing to get your gears tightened and stuff like that. They really are kind of workhorses in that sense.
I could just add real quick too. I think one thing to think about is when you're looking at the expense of an e-bike, there are financing options out there, and there are some banks that will do like loans, like a car loan. Like I know Affinity Plus, the credit union, they have a bike loan, and so it's like buying a car and that it can be financed. So I'm not saying that to like go out and buy like the fanciest bike you can, but like think about like, you know, are there options also to kind of stretch your dollar and to make something work for you, knowing that longer term the maintenance cost, all that is going to be lower.
We've just got a few minutes left here. There's one more question in the chat. Actually, someone joining us from California representing LAX Airport. They've got a question about biking to the airport, if you would do it. But then also the question is talking about considering additional bike parking. And particularly, I'd love to hear in your responses to echoing to the Move Minneapolis audience that is property managers or employers, what bike parking looks like for you all. Is additional bike parking or a particular type of bike parking at the destinations you're trying to get to something that works well for your cargo bikes or your kids as well?
Bike parking is super important. I will just say from my experience, like I do look in advance to see where I can park a bike, and with a cargo bike in particular that's larger, that is not, you don't lift it up on one of those big lift up racks. My bike weighs like 80 pounds or 70 pounds or whatever on its own. I'm not doing any of that. And so if you don't have space for like floor mounted racks, that kind of thing, and don't get fancy with it, just put in some like hoop racks and things like that. That's all you really need. Space them out, give people space. I personally, I have biked to the airport before. I would not with my cargo bike, because I don't feel like my bike would be secure there, because there's no signage even about like, you know, you can park a bike here for a week, or, you know, if I take a trip, or, you know, are there cameras? Is it hidden away in the garage somewhere? So make it clear that you can bike there, make it clear that you can like store a bike there, make it clear that like your bike is safe there, whether that's like a cage or something. Those are all considerations, especially for like long-term storage. If I go to the airport, I'm going to be gone for a while, and I want to know that it's safe.
I think, you know, reiterating that point, a lot of like the attachments that you're putting on, the accessories, are not permanently fixed to the bike either. Some are, some aren't. So that ensuring it's like safe storage, I think, is super important, especially if it's overnight, you're not going to be there. Like we said, these are investment pieces. They're like, you know, sometimes can be as inexpensive as buying a used car. Maybe not anymore, but when I was growing up. And so just ensuring that they're secure, right? And that you can feel confident that's going to be there when you get back with all of your accessories intact. I will say, so sorry, not to out you, Cambray, but we both work for Target. Target has an amazing bike room that is available for their employees to park. That is like icing on the cake, right? They have, you know, tools available for us to use for free. They used to bring in people to teach classes. Just a really safe, secured, like double entry, makes it even easier to make that choice to bike to work when you're thinking about commuting.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and a reality too of biking, and especially in an urban center, is especially with a cargo bike, it's so visible and big, and people know they're kind of rare, and so I think it's there is a risk of theft and things like that. So I personally, like, I don't feel any fear going to the grocery store. I use my bike to go to the grocery store and transport my groceries, no problem. I don't feel a lot of fear, like for a short trip, leaving it locked up. And I'm happy with my security situation. I haven't had any issues to date, but like the idea of working 8-hour day and leaving it on the street all day is a totally different calculation for me. So I think the bike infrastructure, that especially additional infrastructure for parking that has room for other models of bikes that aren't like tiny and hanging on a wall or whatever, the more that's available publicly, I think the better for everybody, so that those choices are easier to make and safer to make, and that it allows us to have that visibility of that this is a normal choice to make.
Yeah, what actually started me on bike commuting was that my employer had an underground car parking garage that they had bike parking built into. And so I had to use my employee key card to get into this garage and could leave my bike locked up to a number of different types of bike parking. That just made it so much easier for me, along with a locker room and showers and all the things. Everyone else has covered most things. The only other thing I was thinking of is one thing that was important for me to learn with riding with a cargo bike, at least, is that even if you've been to a place with a smaller normal bike and successfully locked it up there, doesn't mean that your cargo bike is going to fit. And so you'll see, if you look at the list of recommendations that I have, the lock that we actually picked for our cargo bike is a flexible one that's really nice and long, because oftentimes the typical U-locks, given the size of your frame and wherever the locking thing is, you might not be able to make it fit without blocking the sidewalk or doing something else. And so I think it can be helpful to think about different types of locks for your cargo bike wherever your destination is, just because there's a lot of variability there.
I love that. We also have that kind of flexible lock for that reason. I'd say the one thing that also, if you're representing an employer on this call, getting to where you work is usually the highest stress and the reason people don't bike. And so, like, you may have the nicest parking that anyone's ever seen, but if it's really stressful to actually get to the office, people aren't going to ride their cargo bike there. So if you represent an employer and can advocate for improvements to infrastructure, I think a lot of people here have said, infrastructure is kind of what's holding back us from riding to other places, to ride more with our kids, that kind of thing. Make sure to let folks know, either executive leadership or city council, whoever it is that you can, that what's holding you back is this. Sorry, I had to wear my advocate hat there for a second.
I love that. And on that note, we're running out of time here. I want to note again that any questions that we didn't get to, I'll be sure to follow up on in a follow-up email. In the chat, I'm just going to add a couple opportunities throughout this conversation we've heard about. Just talk to folks, see what bikes and people are out there doing. Both later this week and later this month, I'm just going to share a couple opportunities if you're in Minneapolis to make that happen. The first one's going to be Bike to Work Day. That's downtown. The second one is a really awesome one that's going to be a great opportunity to actually take on a Thursday evening with your kids or yourself, that's really family focused, just off of the Midtown Greenway in South Minneapolis as well. So the first one, Bike to Work Day, Friday, May 19th. That's this upcoming Friday at the Government Center Plaza at 3 p.m. And the second one is June 1st. That's a Thursday. That's going to be a Minneapolis Public Schools and Safe Routes to School alongside Twin Cities adaptive cycling opportunity to get out there for a Let's Roll. So on that note, thank you all for joining us today. This recording is going to be available on our YouTube, and we'll be following up with any further information as well. Thank you all for being here.